Hey there, welcome to another episode of Automation Nation inside Barnum. Today we're doing a little product spotlight and we're going to be talking about SMC chillers. And with us here today is Ryan with SMC. He's the product manager for the chillers. And we actually have one of our newer Barnum product managers for SMC here, Michael. And chillers kind of are something I don't think Barnum has touched too much on. So we wanted to have this opportunity just to kind of chat about them, see give us a little more information on what they are, how to sell them, and how our customers might use them or how they're being used already. Maybe our customers
Yeah.
didn't know we even use them. So, Ryan,
Okay.
I guess let's start off. How long have you been doing the whole chillers thing at SMC?
So I came into the chiller group in 2019. The group was formed a couple years before I came in the group, but yeah. So in 2019 I joined the group. So I've been there a little over 6 years, or almost 6 years. So yeah. And again, SMC kind of formed this group for some of the same reasons you just said. Even within SMC, chillers are a really big product offering that we have. But not a lot of our salespeople were acclimated with them, familiar with them,
Sure.
comfortable talking about them. So that's why they formed our group to kind of, bring more awareness to chillers.
Yeah, it seems like SMC, the buzzword is pneumatics,
Yeah,
actuators, valves,
exactly.
everything's that, and our guys are the best of the best at tech support on those and selling those. Like obviously it speaks for itself when Barnum has how much in inventory in SMC pneumatics already sitting on our shelf and
Right.
everything else SMC. But chillers has been they're there, but yeah, no one knows a ton about them.
Yeah.
We actually had a little sit down with our tech support before this, did a little introduction on them, tell everybody how to support them, how to sell them. Went in depth on some of the features, but I think one of the big points you really talked about was chillers can be one of the biggest markets just because of how advanced they are and how many people actually need them.
Right.
And they're really not a cheap product either. So from a distributor standpoint, there's a lot of money involved in them.
Absolutely.
So I mean, when it comes to chillers, I guess overall, what's like SMC's portion of their company and sales is chillers? I mean, do you know off the top of your head? Kind of thing.
It's relatively small. Now in our we have EP chillers, which are semicon chillers. Now those represent a really a pretty large chunk. I mean, upwards of $100 million in semiconductor chillers. Industrial chillers is a much smaller number, but it's kind of on a vertical I can't say it, trajectory. So year over year, chillers have gained more notoriety, and it's been much more of a vertical path as far as sales dollars go.
Yeah.
Just because we're getting more people engaged in what chillers are, how they're used, where they're used. And the reality is that there's so many new applications out there that we don't even know about yet. I mean, and that's the big takeaway that I always, reinforce to everybody I talk to is, we need to be asking everybody, old customers, new customers, and everybody in between, if they're using temperature control and, if they're using chillers, how they're using them. Because there's several applications where we found we found a customer using it, and we're like, we would have never even thought
Sure.
that a chiller would be used in that way. So
Now, how much I guess the chillers themselves, it's not new, right? SMC's been building these for a
no,
long time. It's not like a new market you guys are trying to get into.
nope,
It's just we're trying to focus on promoting it more because it has been
exactly,
around. It's not
exactly,
some breakthrough technology. It's just
yeah,
SMC's had them and
yep.
their quality and
Yep. Yeah. So SMC's been making chillers for the semicon industry for 40 plus years. I mean, it's nothing new. And our industrial chillers were kind of bred out of that technology. That high precision, high reliability. In a EP environment where you're making wafers for the semicon industry, you can't have chillers fail. You can't have bad product being scrapped because you're talking millions of dollars by the minute. So in our industrial chillers were kind of born out of that with that kind of quality control and build quality in mind. So yeah, so even on the industrial chillers, there's SMC is definitely not new to the game. It's just honestly, in full disclosure, we just didn't do a good job as a company promoting chillers up to this point, and that's why this group was formed. It's like, this is our most valuable product that we offer, and a lot of our long-term customers don't even know that we
Sure.
that we make them. So we need to do a better job getting the word out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I guess down to the most basic, what is a nice, easy way to describe a chiller? Obviously, it's pretty much like an air conditioner, industrial air conditioner within reason.
Yeah.
So yeah,
A lot
down to
of
the
the same
basics.
internals.
SMCs, chillers, how do they function?
Yeah.
How do they actually?
Yeah, so basically, all a chiller is doing is just pulling the heat out of a customer's process, whatever that heat might be, whether it's from a welding tip, from a resistance welding gun, from a 3D printer, from a laser, some type of a laser application. You're just trying to remove that heat out of the process, so that they're making good quality products, and their products are or their machines are lasting as long as they can.
Sure.
So that's really the fundamental function of a chiller, is just removing that heat. And really, what you're doing is if you can kind of think about it, there's really two thermal transfers that happen inside of a chiller. The first one is in between the customer's circulating fluid that goes out and pulls that heat out,
Hmm.
and then internally between the refrigerant and that hot water that heated up from the process, that refrigerant's pulling that heat out of the chiller between one of two ways, either through water cooled applications where the customer supplies facility water to pull that heat out of the refrigerant now, because now you had hot circulating fluid,
Hmm.
you then pull that heat out of that, you heat up your refrigerant, now you got to cool your refrigerant down, and you do that either by facility water from a customer or from a conventional fan, just like you would see, like in your car, a radiator in your car,
Yeah.
kind of
So
a
basically, the same
concept.
concept as a
Yeah,
radiator, moving fluid,
and you're just dumping
air
that
moving
heat
over.
to atmosphere.
Yep.
So yeah, and we have chillers that go from very small tabletop units as big as this water bottle, all the way up to fairly good sized ones, 40 kilowatts, about 11 and a half tons in the ton world.
Hmm.
So yeah, but in everything in between.
And
So
they're all we mentioned kilowatts, so they all are electric, right? They all run off electricity. You
correct.
don't have any gas powered ones or
Yeah,
something like that.
no, yeah,
All electric.
yep.
And
So
so then when someone needs a chiller, is it usually something retrofitted, or just our machines usually designed around they need a chiller already? Like
yeah,
these machine designers, things like that, are creating these, they know there's going to be a coolant circuit
yeah,
in there, and they need a chiller, and they're obviously not the ones building the chillers because that's not their forte. It's
right,
building the laser or
exactly.
everything else.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. So, and that's the one thing we also kind of reinforce is the nice thing about chillers is they're a need, not a want.
Sure.
So, similar to, like, I also cover dryers. So, refrigerated dryers. So in that case, an OEM could make the case that, well, I just specify clean, dry air for my customer, right?
Hmm.
And then it's up to them to provide clean, dry air. But, in a chiller case, there's no middle ground. You either need it or you don't.
Yeah.
So the nice part about them is that, it's a, I don't want to say it's an easy sell, but it's an easier sell because
Yeah,
it's a
you're
requirement.
not coming in with some new technology that's gonna upgrade their current system. It's something
Right.
that exists already, and
Right.
it's just our version of it. It's
Yep.
better than so and so's, or more efficient. And it's kind of, like I said, a different way to sell it because
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
something customers already need.
Yeah. Now, and then there are some applications where it might be a brand new application where they've never used a chiller before,
Hmm.
but it's a process that they want to stabilize, and so they want to try to put a chiller in there because they think it might improve their product or their longevity. So that's another way that we can kind of come in and help them with our application engineering, with our demo loaner program, to where if they don't know. It's kind of like they don't know what they don't know, kind of thing. So we can kind of come in and help them do the calculations, size the chiller, and then even go as far as to give them a demo chiller at no charge to them. And they can kind of, the proof is really in the pudding at that point.
Yeah.
So that's a nice feature that we also have. So, and that's really, it's one thing if you have a chiller existing and we can just take a picture of the product ID label, we can cross it over. That's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
The more difficult ones are where they're like, well, we're not using a chiller right now, but we want to, but we really don't know what our heat load is. We don't know what size we need.
Hmm.
Can you help us?
Yeah.
And that's where we can kind of come in and kind of, gather some data for them, use the demo program and really help them solve their problem that way.
Yeah. So that demo program, is that majority of the line that SMC covers? People
Yeah,
can get demos for them. There isn't
pretty
just
much.
one or two you hear
No,
there.
no,
It's,
I have over almost 90 different 90 chillers in our demo program from 200 watts up to 40 kilowatts. Now, some of those are duplicates of the same exact part number, like on
yeah.
a popular size, like say a 2.4
Yeah,
kilowatt.
because if you have one out on a loaner, then
Yeah.
you know.
So I've got like, maybe 12 of those and maybe 8 of another size. Now on the bigger ones that are, a little bit more costly, I do only have one of each one of those sizes. So it's more of a, if you need that one, we got to wait till it comes back from the current loan and then
Yeah,
send it out to you, kind of get on a wait list kind of thing. But
and that's fully managed through you,
it's
SMC.
actually, yeah,
It's
it's
not through
managed.
the distributor. You're
Nope.
not just like you're not like our VMI cabinets or
Right.
something where you're dropping them off at distributors and
Nope.
say, "Here's your demos that you're going to loan off to people."
Yeah.
And now Michael's got to figure out how to
Track it down.
drag chillers around the state or something.
Right. No, and actually, so I actually manage the entire program for the U.S., not just my region. So because I kind of cover the Midwest and the Southeast. So yeah, a salesperson just said, identifies what chiller they need. They contact me directly.
Mhm.
What they would do is they would get with their local SMC rep that helps them out. Because on our side, we put it into our Sales Connect as an opportunity, so we can kind of track it.
Yeah.
But I also track it on my own spreadsheet. But no, it's basically for all intents and purposes from you guys, you would just contact me with my customer XYZ wants this size chiller. Here's the ship to address. I ship it to them. And a lot of questions I get is, well, what if this customer is brand new and we don't do any business? Are we really going to ship them a $25,000 chiller?
Yeah.
With no like $0 PO or nothing, and the answer is yes. I will ship a chiller to pretty much anybody. So
The point is to get people interested
right.
in it.
So
Not just,
SMC's, yeah, they've
you
taken
know.
on that financial commitment to, it's just the cost of doing business with this demo program.
Mhm.
And the nice thing is that it's got over an 80% hit rate on it. So it's a very successful program. If you can get a customer to commit to it,
Yep.
most likely they're going to buy one.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
it is probably not the most simple thing to set up, test, see if it works, and then just rip it out and try someone else's right
Right.
off the bat. Like if you're getting into that process of demoing it and trying it,
yeah.
if it works, you're probably just going to continue with that.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that.
Right.
So getting something in someone's hands probably is,
Yeah.
like you said, pretty
Now,
beneficial.
And to that point, though, just to full disclosure, is we wouldn't sell that particular demo unit to the customer. They would still disconnect it,
Oh,
and send
yeah,
it back
absolutely.
to us, and then we'd get them a brand new one. With the thought being, that chiller could have been loaned out to half a dozen other customers.
Yeah, there's no
has
warranty
many,
on it,
yeah,
whatever.
there's many run hours on it.
Yeah.
But it's
But
still
now they know
it
the
still
process,
validates.
they know the setup, they know.
Yep.
I mean, I guess getting into another topic too is like how they program and communicate. That's a big thing. Our tech support and our applications team do is we assist on that real technical side of things.
Mhm.
Like these chillers, obviously, you can sell a chiller, drop it in place. It's not just an on-off switch, right? There's some stuff going on in there. I mean, can it talk back to a customer's control system on their machine and the HMIs or whatever to help control that, tweaks to it, or is it just fully automated? You plug it in and it runs.
Well, so honestly, most customers do use it. Just they locally start and stop it. So they just walk up to it and they push the runs,
Mhm.
the run button or the stop button. But there are some customers that do want to be able to, on a, if they're let's say a CNC machine builder or whatever,
Mhm.
they want to be able to when they start the spindle, they want the chiller to turn on.
Sure.
So it does have that communication. And and the nice thing is SMC has applications engineering. That you can either call in or email in. So if you're kind of in the middle of something and you need to troubleshoot, hey, this thing isn't sending the signal correctly, or it's not doing what we think it does. It doesn't have the flow. You can talk to somebody in real time on the phone if you want to, or email them, and we can diagnose most issues over the phone with our applications team.
Mhm.
So they're very responsive. But yeah, it is a nice thing to have, and it is nice that the chillers do have that communication function, either through DIO or full serial communication.
Okay. Say
Yeah.
the serial
Yeah. So
communication.
it can be just a simple, dry contact switch or whatever.
Yep, turn
So,
on, turn off. But
yep.
then you also have that control, adjust temperatures or
Right.
whatnot that
Yep.
that needs to be. Okay. Um, I guess kind of looking at the chiller line as a whole, what is kind of the bread and butter chiller? Like just
Yeah.
for people who have never even gone on SMC's website and looked at them, what's the biggest one you see you sell, most popular one?
Yeah. So our flagship is called our HRS series. It's going to be kind of, I don't know if you can see this, but it's going to be more of a chiller that looks similar to this. It's got, it's a fairly small one. It has casters. It's very mobile. You can move it
Mhm.
around. That's our flagship, if you will. Then
I
we
mean, it
have,
kind of almost looks like a welder box.
yeah.
It's not that
Well,
big, little.
yeah, and that's even what we try to educate people on, because when they're walking past these, even our own salespeople, they're not familiar a lot of times with what they look like. So that's why we say when you're walking through a facility,
Mhm.
if you see something with a fan, like it's kind of hard to see this one, but like a black fan out the top, that's going to indicate that's a chiller. Or look for water lines going to a box, if you
Sure.
will, and that's an indication that it might be a chiller, and to ask some qualifying questions.
So it
But
doesn't just look like your AC unit sitting on the side of your house. It's a
right,
little bit more, streamlined or industrial
yeah,
looking. But I mean, at the end of the day, you go on SMC's website, type in chillers,
yeah,
pretty cut and dry, getting a good idea what they look like. And,
yeah.
so for salesmen listening to this, I mean, just like you said, having that mental image of it, it's
Right.
probably, I would assume a lot of different competitors and stuff are pretty similar look, shape,
They
feel.
are.
So, when you're walking through a
Yeah.
plant and you see so and so's chiller and you're like, hey, maybe we could swap that to SMC.
Yeah.
Now it's actually something in a salesman's mind
Right.
versus, like you said, and it just was on the back burner forever.
Right. Well, like you were kind of indicating, the first step is identifying it. Even know that you're walking past a chiller, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, once we
I think it's
identify what
part
a
of the
chiller
machine,
looks
whatever,
like, yeah, they just assume, oh, well, I thought that was just like maybe like their power transformer or something,
Mhm.
something sitting next to a
Those
robot
big
cell.
robot controller
Yeah,
boxes that are there.
exactly. So the first step is identify what a chiller even looks like, and then you can say, oh, well, that's what that competitor chiller looks like. SMC has a variation. So,
Yeah.
and again, we have from a chiller literally no bigger than this water bottle tall, all the way up to pretty large 40 kilowatt set in place kind of chillers.
Mhm.
So,
So I mean, those things I guess would cool everything from lab equipment, small style lab equipment, printers, things like that. When you're at the real small end, all the way up to just heavy duty machinery. Like
right,
I mean,
yeah.
I can't imagine the type of just actual fluid moving through
Yeah.
those to actually.
Yep. Yeah, there's some like, let's say, corrugated box manufacturers where they're trying to control the temperature of the glue that the boxes are held together with.
Yep.
That can, some of those take really big ones, and they can get really big really quick too. And so that's one thing to be aware of is, SMC, when you're looking in the whole scale, the whole gamut of chillers, you can get really, really massive chillers like rooftop styles, and that's not really where SMC's wheelhouse is.
Yeah.
We're in that small analytical lab
Mhm.
style environment to relatively large industrial sizes, but some of these ones are like, if you're talking like a train unit that sits on top of a rooftop, and that's outside the scope of what SMC will probably ever be.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's just like anything. You only can take your product line so far.
right,
I mean, we touch on that all the time with our SMC electric actuators.
right,
There are electric actuators that will move boats around. It's not SMC's wheelhouse.
right,
They have great electric actuators, but they're not going to build these monsters because
Right.
it's just not practical for their
Yep.
product line. Chillers are the same thing. There's obviously a goal,
right.
sizing,
Sweet spot, if you will.
exactly.
Yeah,
So the HRS. So for people knowing, the HRS is kind of the flagship. Everything kind of
yeah,
goes up or down from there.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, after the HRS, you like our bigger cells is called our HRS H's,
mhm.
which is basically a variation of the HRS, but just it's got triple inverters on it. So on your fans, your compressors, and your pumps, you have inverters. So the nice thing with those is they can sense essentially the heat load that the chiller is seeing, and it can either speed up, it can RPM up or down to account for how much load it's seeing from the customer's process. So
Okay.
with that, you can get a lot of energy efficiency
Yeah.
So I believe the catalog says we get a 54% energy reduction with the HRSH series. And then also just the longevity. So if your chiller isn't running wide open, if you will, it's the equivalent of, if you're holding your gas pedal wide open on your car,
Mm-hmm.
that's what a traditional chiller is doing. It's just giving you everything it has all the time.
Yeah.
Your max flow, everything. But on these HRSHs, it's like, okay, well, if I don't need to go wide open, I'm not going to go wide
Sure.
open.
So it's going to function more like, a thermostat at that point,
Yeah.
where it's only going to turn on when it needs to.
Right.
It's going to actually take care of itself, which that comes down into that's just part of the machine itself, the chiller itself. That's not special programming someone needs to do, right? That is not
Nope.
some
Nope. It's all
PLC logic.
it's
You need
all
to
in the
be an expert
algorithm.
to
Yeah.
figure out how the chiller works.
It just automatically does it. Yeah. It's got.
That's
Yep.
nice for sure. Obviously the chillers, I would assume probably aren't just using water in them. I would assume like a refrigerant, things like that too. Are the chillers capable of different ones, or are they really unique? This style is going to use this type of refrigerant, things
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
I know that's a topic for certain people, like they can't have certain chemicals in a plant or whatnot.
Right.
So I would assume they can be swapped out depending on it, but
Yes.
it probably changes efficiency and things like that
Right.
depending on what you use.
Yeah, so in our catalog, we basically, ethylene glycol is what we recommend. Basically regular tap water or distilled water is our recommended circulating fluid, if you will. What's actually going to be in the chiller, going out to the customer's process. Just regular distilled water.
Mhm.
If they need ethylene glycol, a 15% max on the mixture, or on the percentage. But you really only need ethylene glycol if your set temperature is below 10 degrees C. So if it's just regularly, 20 degrees C, or which is like 68 to 72 degrees, Fahrenheit, regular, room temperatures, then just regular distilled water is fine.
Sure.
Maybe with some kind of an antifungal additive for biological growth, something like that. But otherwise, we recommend every 3 months you change your fluid. So if you're doing that religiously, most people can get away with just that, with just the distilled water, and that way with ethylene glycol, because it is toxic in a lot of facilities, especially in a food application.
Yeah.
A lot of people, that's a no fly, so they can't use that. So they really want to try to stick to just the water.
You mentioned a good point too about how, you're probably trying to keep that fluid in the machine around like room temperature. So like kind of, when we hear chillers, you think of it's getting cold. We're trying to cool this thing down, but
Yep.
at the end of the day, the actual fluid in the machine itself is hot, like hot,
Right.
scalding hot sometimes.
Yep.
And so getting fluid down to room temperature is actually probably a decent amount of effort because
Right.
it's a lot warmer, double, triple the temperature.
Right.
So it actually is chilling quite well.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I also was looking at that before, and they also can heat if necessary.
Mhm.
So, like, let's say your machine is in a cold environment, it
Right.
can make sure it's still maintaining a normal temperature.
Yep. Yeah, there are some applications where if they've coming off of like a weekend and they need to start and they want it to be, let's say it's a non-air conditioned room and it's maybe in the 30 or 40 degree range or whatever the temperature is, they need it to be at that 68 degrees. So it might actually have to heat up
Mhm.
initially to a certain temperature. So yeah, we do have we have a heating function where we actually tap into our hot compressor gases and we coil that around the circulating fluid. So unlike other competitors that use heating elements,
Mhm.
it's one less component to potentially fail,
Okay.
and it's a lot more efficient at reacting to temperature fluctuations.
Okay.
So yeah,
So then that.
so yeah, chillers don't always have to be chilling; they can, in some cases, be
Yeah.
heating, if you will. Yeah.
So in like, let's say if someone had one of the large chillers and they had it mounted outside of their facility, and it got really, really cold,
Mhm.
it can maintain itself out there as well.
Right.
It doesn't need to be ultra insulated indoors
Right.
for this thing to function.
Right.
I
Yeah.
would assume some of these are meant to be only indoors, and some of these can be outdoor rated.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, typically our smaller roll around style, those are for indoor only.
Yeah.
Our larger set in place, like our HRSH that we were
Yep.
talking about with the triple inverters, those are IPX4 rated. So that means they can go outdoors. A lot of them have an anti-freezing function on them, so they will, similar to like your if you have an all electric home, your heat pump, it'll
Mhm.
go into like a defrost mode.
Sure.
Similar to the chillers, it'll do an anti-freeze mode. And we even have some chillers that have like snow hoods on them.
Okay.
So to keep, if you're in a heavy snow environment, it'll kind of keep some of that snow from falling down in on top of the fan.
Yeah.
So yeah, the larger set in place units are mostly IPX4 rated for outdoor use.
Okay. Good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a lot with these things, but also not a lot because all of the programming, the technology, everything is done for us. For
Right.
a customer that's getting one of these, there's really not a whole lot that we have to worry about. I think
Right.
as Barnum as a whole, we're so used to selling such technologically advanced products that we're having to either hold a lot of hands or teach people how to use things a lot of ways. And it
Yeah.
really does seem like you got the whole realm with the chiller.
Yeah.
So drop it in and run. If you want
It
to get
is.
advanced with it, you can.
Yes.
But
That is the nice thing, and that's what we say a lot of times. As long as you get the heat, the heat load correct, you get it
Mhm.
sized correctly. It's kind of a set it and forget it kind of thing. You hit run, and some of our customers like 3D printers, even if they're not printing, they let these things run 24/7, 365. They never shut them off.
How
So
long
yeah,
how long does one last in general? Let's say not the biggest, baddest fancy one, just an
yeah,
average one. I mean, if there's someone's running these things all the time,
yeah.
I mean, I would assume they got quite a lifespan.
Yeah, they do, and it's kind of there's a wide spectrum. So there's different types of pumps in each one of these chillers.
Hmm.
Some of the magnetically coupled ones, you can see those things run 60, 70,000 hours without the pump ever failing. Um, to put that in perspective, somebody running a 24/7, 365 shift, that's about 8,000 hours a year.
Sure.
So just the pump alone, I mean, you may run years and years and never have any issues. Now, some other pumps have more of a seal set in them. It's kind of like a clutch in a car, if you will, where there's a
Hmm.
wear surface.
Yeah.
So we recommend those being changed or at least inspected every 8,000 hours, once a year,
Yeah.
if you're running 24/7, to see if you're getting any kind of, fluid dripping or anything like that. But those are all serviceable.
Hmm.
So as
These
far
are
as
not
the
just a throwaway style
no,
package.
no.
They're
Most everything on here can be replaced or serviced, but then it just becomes a balance of okay, with the things they need to be replaced, is it more cost effective to fix it or just buy a new one? And there's always
Mhm.
a sweet spot for that. But yeah, these chillers are fully repairable. You know, compressors, pumps, fans, things like that. Now, with that said, I mean, they honestly they very seldom do fail because again they're just designed to turn on and just run.
Yeah.
But to say how long is the average, it's a hard question to answer just because we have some, if they're running all the time, maybe 5 to 7 years, but then at the same time we've got people that have run them for 15 years,
Hmm.
and they're on our old style, their HRG, which was before the HRS even, and we still have customers calling in saying, hey, I need to service this chiller. We're like, well, that thing's
Been
almost 20
obsoleted
years
for so
old.
long. We
Yeah,
need.
how about we just update you until the new millennium kind of
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, these are really set, like you said. I mean, from a tech or from a once you demystify them, again, so many people are kind of scared to talk about them and sell them because they just don't understand them. Once you understand the basics about them, they're really not that complicated.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of, if you will, the heavy lifting, SMC is here to help with all of that.
Hmm.
Really what we need is to identify the opportunities, and then we can work with you to close all that. I mean, yeah, there's just not a lot that the customer has to tinker with on these. Just turn it on. As long as we set as long as we nail the heat load,
Hmm.
set it and just walk away from it.
Now, for potential, Barnum salesmen listening to this, when you sell a chiller, what other stuff goes with it? Obviously, there's other things. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
there can be some pressure sensors, things like that, that also fits in that realm of you can't just drop this thing off and run. And there's
yeah.
obviously some other things that can go with it,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, there's a lot of accessories that you can add on to this. The bypass kit being one of the most important ones. And what a bypass kit does is it helps kind of alleviate any back pressure on the system. For example, let's say a chiller can make 15 liters a minute of flow,
Hmm.
but the orifice on the customer's tool can only accept 7 liters a minute.
Hmm.
So you've got an extra, 6 or 7 liters that can't go through that orifice. So without a bypass kit, that starts to build up back pressure on the pump, and you
Hmm.
could eventually see some alarms and things like that. A bypass kit, you could crack that open and recirculate that unneeded fluid directly back into the chiller, keeps everything happy.
Sure.
So that's one really important accessory. Other ones are always particulate filters, both on the inlet and the outlet. Protects both the customer's tool and the chiller from any debris that might break free, any corrosion that might happen over time. If it's going through a steel passageway, maybe some rust that might develop, things like that.
Absolutely. Or even depending on the quality of the customer's water.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yep.
Gosh, I can't imagine some of the just junk water
Oh, yeah.
plants use that filters are 100% necessary.
Yeah. Well, and even depending on what part of the country, you can have, heavy rust, heavy scale,
Yep.
heavy lime, depending on where in the U.S. you are. So yeah, definitely, it's again, cheap insurance, both of those, both the bypass kit and the filter sets, for just ensuring that you keep both your process and the chiller happy.
Sure.
Some of the other things is PF3Ws, which are water flow sensors. So you can monitor both your temperature and your flow. So if you're in a really critical process, you can kind of keep a check on that. Some other nice features are KKA quick disconnect couplers. So if you're in a place where you're needing to disconnect this for like service, or let's say you're in a washdown environment and you need to roll the chiller out
Sure.
to wash down the full environment, well, KKA quick disconnect couplers that have double check valves on both ends that have a zero loss
So yeah,
of
you
the
don't have
fluid.
to purge the system or anything.
Yeah, so every
It's
time you
just-
disconnect it, you're not dumping water everywhere. So our stainless steel KKA couplers are another nice thing that just makes life simpler.
Okay.
So those are the three big components. There's some other things like you can do drip trays. If you're in a spot where you need to contain water, if you did see a leak. But those are the three big accessories. The particulate filters, the bypass kits, and the KKA couplers.
Okay.
Really makes life easier.
I think we covered a lot of good stuff on these. I think one last thing I want to ask is, since you've been doing this for the last few years, in your opinion, what's like one of the really the coolest applications you've gotten into with the chillers? Like
Yeah.
that just kind of like I didn't even know this kind of existed, and I got to help sell and install one of these or something
Right.
like that. Just as a
So the coolest one I mean, there's a few really cool ones. There's one like the Al Davis torch in the Las Vegas stadium that our chiller was part of making that printed structure. That's really cool. But the one personally is there's a company out there that's making digital laser projectors for cinemas. So you go to a movie, you go to an AMC theater, and there's three different tickets that you can buy. It's either an HD, an IMAX, or a Dolby Vision plus Atmos. So that level of ticket gets you a premium viewing experience, and it's on a brand new digital or laser projector that won a Technical Academy Award last year at the Oscars. And those use our chillers on them now. So
really just during the
movie,
film,
so
because there's such a beefy
it's such a
hot
power
unit.
Yeah, so it's such a powerful laser that's projecting this really high contrast, bright image,
Yeah.
and it needs a chiller to cool that down. So literally, when you're sitting in a theater behind that wall
Yeah.
where the projector is, there's a chiller right next to it that's ours.
That's pretty cool.
That's,
That's something you would never really
right.
cross your mind. That you always you projector that's in the office training room or something. You hear the fan going. You know those things get hot because the bulbs in them.
Right.
But I guess it makes sense once you get to that level where they are just
Yeah.
massive and ultra quality. Those things are going to put out heat that just the average fan isn't
Right.
gonna handle.
Right. Well, and that's what when we started this, and that's what I kind of stress when people ask me, or the $1 million question is, where do we go look for chillers? Tell us where to go.
Yep.
And obviously, we want to go down our traditional paths of industrial applications like laser applications, food packaging, things like that. But there are going to be those unicorns, if you will, that are these gold, these kind of gold mines that who would ever think you need a chiller in a movie theater?
Yeah.
And right now, that's like I think that's our second biggest chiller customer.
Maybe there's going to be some kids wanting to build a new gaming PC that need an SMC chiller on it because they're just going way over the top.
Right. So, but yeah, so the big takeaway is, obviously we want to go down all of our traditional channels in manufacturing, but at the end of the day, we want to ask anybody and everybody we come in contact with, every product demo we do, every lunch and learn we do,
Mhm.
every distributor training that we do, we always want to be asking, ask everybody,
Yeah.
new and old. I don't care if they're your best friend, you've been doing business with them for 25 years.
There's untapped potential that we just probably never even had the conversation yet.
Right.
So,
Yep.
no, great. I think that is a really good little summary of these things. I think whoever's listening should get something out of it. I guess if anybody has questions as they get going, or even opportunities right off the bat, um, Barnum salesmen should be aware, be able to take some calls, and
Yep.
they have your contact information. They got Mike and his two counterparts, who are SMC product managers, information to really help out with these. Because, like I said, again, it might be fairly new to our salesmen,
Right.
but anyone else who's watching or listening that might be a potential customer, again, reach out to Barnum. We'll set you up. Or if you got a local SMC guy you already know, reach out to them.
Absolutely.
And got loaner programs, obviously North American stock.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I don't know if we touched on it here, but yeah, we are building several chillers in Noblesville up to the 9 kilowatt. So we have a good amount of stock on all those smaller sizes up to 9 kilowatts ready to ship.
that's
So,
good to know,
yeah.
for sure. People like hearing that it's made close by.
Right.
Not, if something happens, they don't have to wait however long to get it on the boat.
Well, and to that point also, even if it is going to go on a boat or if you're an OEM building here
Mhm.
in Michigan and it's going to go to Europe or somewhere like that, SMC has a global footprint of service and, repair and everything else. So, that's the one benefit that we do have is whereas a regional chiller company, might not be able to service you if it goes overseas.
Sure.
A lot of companies are doing global business, obviously. So whether this goes to South America, goes to Asia, Europe, we're going to be able to support you from an SMC standpoint,
Yep.
no matter where it goes.
That's good, for sure. Well, thank you guys.
All right, thank
I
you.
think that was a good chat. And again, as always, if anybody needs something from Barnum, let us know. If you got any direct questions too, feel free to comment on our YouTube video. And we'll see you next time for another Automation Nation episode. Thank you.